And
are
guys,
you a Barbie girl? Oh, sorry.
And guys, are you a Barbie girl? Life in whatever.
That's the intro.
So it is the intro.
Oh, you're what?
That's right. Hello, you are listening to Off Radar, It's a Movie podcast. I'm James Smith, a professional film and video editor.
I'm James Eatock, a freelance writer and illustrator specialising in 1980s cartoons.
And I'm Neil Brock, aka Nige, the man with two names, former film journalist and currently working in the games industry.
Each week, one of us picks a movie that all three of us either haven't seen in many years or in some cases haven't seen at all.
We each watch the chosen movie, return to the microphone and let you all know exactly what we thought of it.
I'd never really had any interest in watching it and I was proved absolutely right.
I think it's amazing. I really, really love this film.
The film's still a pile of steaming dog shit.
If you fancy joining in and suggesting a movie for us to watch, why not tweet us at OffRadarPodcast
or email us on offradarpod@gmail.com.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, share, and by all means, leave a review.
For now, strap in, turn the volume up, and let's go Off Radar. Hello, and welcome to Off Radar World. I am James Smith. And I'm joined by two other bloody Kens, Neil Brock.
Hi, Smith.
And James Eatock.
Hello.
And throughout the whole episode,
Beach
we're going to call each other
Eatock, you
Ken.
mean? Beach Eatock.
Beach Eatock. Hench Eatock.
Two other bloody Kens. That's such a great line. Oh, man. That's tickled me.
And yeah, as you might have guessed, today we are talking about the biggest film of 2023, grossing $1.44 billion worldwide, Barbie. So this was one I suggested we watch mainly because it's quite popular and I think people might listen to this. Had we seen it before we did it for the podcast? Nige?
Yeah, I saw it at the cinema. So
did you really?
I don't go to the cinema much these days because of COVID and all that. And since COVID, I think I've seen maybe 2 or 3 films. Yeah, 3 films at the cinema, and one of them I took my lovely wife Helen to see Barbie. So had a choice between Oppenheimer and this, and we went Barbie. So there you go.
Interesting.
Think pink.
I went Oppenheimer but to the cinema. I did not see this at the cinema, and this was a first watch for me. Eatock, had you seen this one?
No, I didn't see it at the cinema. I really wanted to go and see it at the cinema, but it was just when I was in America in August, it was at the cinema, and I tried to, when I was in Canada for 8 hours, I had to kill 8.5 hours in Canada, and I went to the cinema, and the showing of Barbie ended when I had to be in the airport. So I was just like, because I ventured into Toronto for 8.5 hours, and just like, I was very much going to go and see it. So I was looking forward to seeing this film. So when it was mentioned that we were going to be doing it, I was like, fantastic, I get to watch it. So I watched it the night before we did this.
Yeah, same. Not same that the night before I watched it, but yeah, I was very much excited to see this film due to the hype and I guess the humongous marketing campaign that went on around it. But maybe before we get there, this film was directed and written by Greta Gerwig, who I don't think I've really seen any of her work. I've heard good things about Lady Bird, but you guys seen much of her? Or?
Well, she did Little Women as well, didn't she? And she's a prolific actress, actor as well. Frances Ha, she was in, which is really good. She's worked with Noah Baumbach, is it? Who's her husband as well, and I think he helped write this. So yeah, I've got a lot of time for Greta Gerwig, and the fact she was attached to this, I think had this been almost any other director, I wouldn't have really had any interest at all in watching this. So it was really her that sort of attracted me to go and see it at the cinema.
Interesting. Oh wow, interesting. And stars Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling, who are obviously kind of plastered all over it, plus a whole host of supporting cast. And Eatock, I asked you to give us a little synopsis for this film.
Which I wrote literally 5 minutes for the podcast, but I think it does a good job of summarising it. Here we go. So
you have to sing it in the I'm
not singing it like Aqua.
Okay.
So Barbie lives in Barbie Land alongside all the other Barbies, as does her erstwhile boyfriend Ken. Sorry, boyfriend in quotation marks, I should say. Barbie begins to experience new emotions, questioning death, something that Barbies do not experience. Upon learning that her owner, the young girl who played with her, has been experiencing feelings of deep sadness, Barbie and Ken enter the real world and discover more about themselves than they had planned to. Barbie quickly discovers that she did not make the world a better place, and Ken discovers a world in which he actually feels relevant and noticed, and thus their respective journeys of self-discovery begin. Oh, that's pretty
nice. Good. That's good.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
Cliffhanger at the end. I'm sure
I did. I like a little bit of a cliffhanger.
The little trailer will come in there, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hey, Barbie. Can I come to your house tonight?
Sure. I don't have anything big planned, just a giant blowout party with all the Barbies and planned choreography and a bespoke song. You should stop by.
So cool.
You can find me under the lights, diamonds under my eyes.
This is the best day ever.
It is the best day ever. So is yesterday, and so is tomorrow, and every day from now until forever.
At the start of this film, we open in the desert, 2001 music, Space Odyssey, giant Barbie, and a load of little girls destroying Barbies like the monkey things in 2001.
Well, they're destroying like old-fashioned dolls, aren't they?
Sorry, old-fashioned dolls. Really interesting start to the film. The fact that we're in a desert, it's actually quite barren and and then obviously we get Barbie World, which is the intense and vibrant pinks and colours to come.
That opening with the 2001 Space Odyssey, I just thought it was fucking genius, because I think right from the get-go it tells you the kind of movie it's going to be and not the movie you thought it was going to be. Because I'd heard a few rumblings that this was going to be, this isn't,
what you think. It's satirical.
Yeah, very much satirical. And I thought the opening was brilliant. I watched it. And like you say, that transition to Barbie World where it's so vibrant and intense, and you get the singing straight from the get-go, like the woman singing the Barbie kind of song, not the Aqua song, that is, but she's singing, and when she's singing, you've got, I'm guessing that's Helen Mirren doing the narration.
Yeah, it is Helen Mirren.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I was going to say, it certainly sounded like Helen Mirren. And yeah, she's kind of like talking about Barbie, the life she leads kind of thing. And then at one point Helen Mirren says something, and the singer says like, I was still singing. And then you see like all the different Barbies in Barbie Land, like they're all called Barbie, but they all have different roles based on the toys that Mattel released back in, throughout the decades of Barbie. And the singing in one point goes, we see the president. There's a black Barbie president, and the singer goes, Black Barbie president. And I thought they really are kind of winking at the audience straight away. And I was like, yeah, I'm invested.
Yeah, definitely. And it, straight away as well, like the choreography of that dancing is so well done. It feels basically like it was already a musical turned into a film, rather than a film that is probably now going to become a musical. And I thought, oh man, this music sounds like Mark Ronson, and he did write and produce quite a lot of the music in this film.
Oh really?
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I woun't know what his stuff sounds like, but
it's kind of very poppy. It's perfectly suited to this film. But then then obviously we're introduced to Barbie, Margot Robbie Barbie, which is the I think, do they call it stereotypical Barbie?
Yeah,
it's almost like classic Barbie, isn't it?
Classic, perfect Barbie, and she is perfect Barbie. If you're going to cast perfect Barbie, you're going to have a very beautiful, blonde, attractive woman with long legs who smiles, who looks kind of perfect. So Margot Robbie, this could almost be like the kind of perfect role for her, and you can't really imagine anyone else kind of playing this when you're watching it. But then Ken, Ryan Gosling, Ken, it kind of feels like kind of really a little bit funny, because Ryan Gosling, very attractive man, top off, as all of the characters are in this film. But yeah, he's the alpha, and all the Kens are kind of vying against each other, and all the Barbies are. Yeah, well, but they're Barbies, so it's this satirical look at the feminism, but also...
Although he does look up to the other Ken. There's the Asian Ken.
Backflipping Ken.
Yeah, and he kind of really like he says, "Oh, but he's so cool," when he's referring to that Ken. But one of the things I love about the narration when we first meet Ken is like, Barbie always has like great days, and then Helen Mirren says Ken only has a great day if Barbie looks at him. And I was like, I fucking love that. That's such a wonderful thing, because it's the stuff they slowly, well, not quite that slowly, build throughout the movie. Of there's so much meaning behind so much of this. What would seem like throwaway in the eyes of some of the audience, but yeah, we get the big party, big dance number, and that's where we get like a moment that I burst out laughing because it was so unexpected, where they're all dancing. It's like a great day, and it's better. You know, yesterday was a great day, and tomorrow's going to be an even greater day. And Margot Robbie then just suddenly goes, Has anyone thought about dying? You ever think about dying? And the whole music and everybody stops, and she goes, "Do you
guys ever think about dying?" I don't know why I just said that. I'm just dying to dance.
Well, yeah, and that's basically what happens in a nutshell. It's like this perfect existence, the Barbie land, and all of a sudden questioning things. And yeah, it's really interesting in terms of how it looks at sort of feminism and the idea of sort of in this world that the Kens are very much sort of second class, and as said, they don't really have as much of a purpose. The fact that sort of the Ryan Gosling Ken is just beach Ken, which doesn't really mean anything, and the fact that all the Barbies are in these amazing professions and careers, and like again for them in that world, they think, oh yeah, we're inspiring women to be doctors or presidents or pilots or whatever, all these different things, which when they eventually do step into the real world, they find, unfortunately, that is not necessarily the case.
Well, you touched upon something there that we need to kind of get into, I think, straight off, which is that I guess the meta of this movie is that we're in this world, and even though they're in this world, their actions or personalities are still generated by I mentioned in my description, like the owners that play with them, so their personalities are dictated by that, and we get that a wonderful kind of version of that with Kate McKinnon, who I really liked. She was for me the only thing in that Ghostbusters movie, the all female Ghostbusters movie. I really loved her in that, or liked her in that, and she's really good on Saturday Night Live, and she's great in this as Weird Barbie. And it's the running joke is we call her Weird Barbie behind her back and to her face, and the reason she's called Weird Barbie is that the little girl that played with her do what all little girls and little boys do with their toys at some point, which is, oh, what can I do with this? Like, put a felt tip on a face, or pull an arm off and do this.
Cut the hair and make her...
and she's constantly in the splits as well, which is, like, I think she says, like, why is she constantly in the splits? And because when we see the scenes of the little girl that played with her, she, like, burns her hair and makes her do the splits and stuff. So Kate McKinnon is introduced almost like as... This is going to be sounds like bloody obvious, but almost like as a Morpheus, which we see in the trailer, where she presents to Barbie and says, you're having these feelings of weirdness because, you know, the person in the real world that's playing with your doll is experiencing feelings of sadness, which are obviously affecting stereotypical Barbie played by Margot Robbie.
Yeah, and that moment she has the two shoes, doesn't she? So she has the high heel, choose the high heel or choose the flat shoe, which is basically like the pill in the Matrix. But yeah, and because of the high heel thing, we found out a little bit before this that Margot Robbie's character, that Barbie, her feet start to touch the ground because all the rest of the time they're like flat feet, and they all go but yeah, but basically there's this kind of weird kind of transformation with Margot Robbie's Barbie, stereotypical Barbie, and she can't quite put her finger on what's going on before she obviously has to then make this journey into the real world, as it were.
Some things have been happening that might be related.
When my world shakes.
Cold shower, falling off my roof, and my heels are on the ground. What do I have to do? You have to go to the real world.
You can go back to your regular life, or you can know the truth about the universe. The choice is now yours.
There's a really lovely, and they use the montage a few times, where it shows them, it's like, how do we get to the real world? Because it shows you on a map that the real world is here, and like Barbie Land is just outside of California. And and Kate McKinnon's Weird Barbie says, oh, to get there you have to, drive a car, ride a bike, take a rocket ship, do this. Because
it's a snowmobile in there as well, and a few other things, with all the different outfits, of course.
Yeah, because it's a child's imagination of traversing a distance. You don't go through a dimensional gate or typical means of dimension hopping. It's like, how would you get there in a child's imagination? It's this wonderfully weird, creative way of doing things. And what I love about that sequence is it's completely shot in 2D. They're on the bike. As soon as they walk through and they're on Venice Beach in Los Angeles, the camera suddenly turns and you're in like the real world. So the camera becomes like a 3D, element. And I really like that sudden visual. And obviously they stand out, as we know, like sore thumbs.
Well, you say that, of all the places you could come out into a world from somewhere like Barbie Land, Venice Beach is like, it's not that dissimilar. There's a lot of interesting people there, and the fact they even stand out.
Exactly, and I guess that's the point, isn't it? They come to Venice Beach where you would associate like almost like a perfect world, but actually it's not. There's sexism and misogyny, and someone slaps Barbie's arse and she almost just smacks him in the face, and
which is there's another great gag there. Smacks him in the face, then they're being taken, they're having mug shots because they've been arrested for violence. Then it shows them, we need better clothes. They come out of a shop wearing these new outfits, and the guy goes, you need to pay for those, so they run away, and the next thing they're back in the police station. And I just love that immediate, that was a really strong, almost like a Family Guy gag, where it's gag of Simpsons,
it is very much so. And I think a lot of this film, they do the look and feel of this film is massive.
Especially in Barbie Land.
The Barbie Land, the world that they have created is. So at times it's kind of like wow, in quite visually mesmerizing. But then they also play with it a little bit. So the composition, you kind of, it looks a bit fake, like the green screen or something.
The plastic toys, the plastic pool toys. There's no pool. It's an image of it's a fictional pool.
Yeah, they don't eat food, do they? They don't drink anything. It's all just it's pretend. It's like you would if you were a small child playing with a doll or whatever. So yeah, it's really nicely done, and the colours are so bright and so brash, and again that you go to somewhere like Venice Beach, which is recognised as being something a bit outlandish, and suddenly it's dulled slightly. It's like, wow, that's incredible.
Absolutely. When they're in Venice Beach, they're having this conversation, and there's the immediate realisation that the real world isn't what they thought it was going to be. And this is where their separate journeys of self-discovery that I kind of mentioned in the synopsis begin, where Barbie says something like, I'm feeling weird, there's something not quite right here. It's like she's basically trying to understand the word uncomfortable, which is something she's never had to use in Barbie Land because everything's so perfect. And Ryan Gosling's like, oh, I'm feeling admired. Because obviously he's a very dashing, handsome man. He's like, he goes, I'm feeling admired with no undertone of violence. And Barbie basically just says, my experience very much has an undertone of violence, because I've been to Venice Beach, and it's a fantastical place, like much of Los Angeles. But also, if you go to Venice Beach at a certain point, basically you're told not to go to Venice Beach at a certain time of day, because you will probably get mugged and in certain places. So just a little bit of holiday advice there. Go to Venice Beach when it's bright and sunny on the weekend. Don't go weekdays past midday, past 5 p.m.
Past midday, blimey.
Past midday.
Did you know you can now subscribe to Off Radar? It's a movie podcast on YouTube. You can watch exclusive trailers and listen to brand new full episodes. All links and info in the description down below.
Somebody stop me!
There's one beautiful scene which I really love, which I recognise being filmed outside the Greenwich Park Observatory. When they first split up, she sits down and she goes, just go for a walk, don't go far. And Ryan Gosling goes off for a walk, and on his journey, he discovers that, you know, men are the dominant species, and also he has a fixation with horses. We get a nice cameo from Stallone as well, like a bearded Stallone as well. I was like, Smith's going to love this.
Absolutely.
How could you not?
I wrote that in my notes, bearded Stallone.
Stallone, you have to. Anytime Stallone has a beard, why didn't you do why didn't Rocky IV keep the beard? But there's a beautiful shot, and it's, I fucking loved it. And it was the way it was set up. I'm watching it thinking, are they going to do this? Where it was on Margot Robbie, and she goes, I'm going to just sit here, and she's trying to connect with this young girl she assumes plays with her, like is the kind of the one that's directing her emotions. And, you know, she reaches out, and it's kind of like a very kind of, you know, telepathic thing almost. And you see this young girl kind of in a very, you know, as a young girl, kind of a little bit older, but kind of a bit of a moody teenager, like not connecting with her mother, kind of, you know, like a mother dropping her off at school and her just getting out of the car. And it cuts back to Margot Robbie, and obviously she's connecting with this new world as well. And she's got her eyes closed. She opens her eyes and like a single tear drops. And I was just like, oh my God, this felt like, and I think you may have both seen this film. It reminds me of that one of my favourite shots, I think, in movie history is Margot Robbie looking in the mirror in I, Tonya. Yes. It's an incredible set.
I only watched it after you said about it on the pod, but
I love that shot. That shot of her where she's just looking in the mirror for about, or like directly into camera, but it's supposed to be a mirror for light, and I feels like a minute and a half, and it's just her going through his emotions. But it just shows you like, oh, that's what an actor can do. Like that's what an actor who's so in tune with their emotions. And it was like here where she opens her eyes. I guarantee 100% that's a completely. Her teardrop is not computer generated, but I thought it's such a beautiful scene of her connecting, whilst without undermining it, showing like Ryan Gosling on his like beginning of his comical self-discovery, as it were. But yeah, she realizes she has to go and find this young girl.
Yeah, it's that almost like that kind of Toy Story moment, isn't it? With the
yes, good
you know,
shout.
Like the kind of we don't play with you anymore.
Discarded toys.
Yeah.
Great shout.
But yeah, and then I think this is the point in the film where it starts to get a bit messy. But the fact that so Ken goes back and kind of sets up this Ken world while Bobby, Margot Robbie, Barbie, who get there in the end. But yeah, she obviously meets all the Mattel men, and they're being painted like corporations and governments. They're all awful, and Will Ferrell is like the kind of CEO or whatever, who I think is wasted in this film because I don't think any of his lines are very funny, and unfortunately I don't think he's been written well enough considering I've seen so many of his films. But anyway.
Wow, this is the real world. What's going on? Why are these men looking at me?
Yeah, they're also staring at me.
Barbie in the real world. That's impossible.
If this got out, this could mean extremely weird things for our world. This would be catastrophic!
We haven't played with Barbie since we were like 5 years old. Oh.
No one rests until this doll is back in a box. Even if nobody else sings along.
Barbie goes to the school to meet the young girl Sasha, and she approaches her and it's like, I'm your favourite toy, Barbie. And it's almost like Mean Girls. There's Sasha and her little girlfriends, and they're kind of looking at her like, you're everything that's wrong with the world. It's almost like a little militant young feminist kind of thing, just very like you've made everything bad, you know. And I remember I was watching this scene thinking like, oh no, please don't let us go down this path. I don't want this to be that movie. If you were going to do a message, luckily later in the film it brings itself presents the message very differently and more appropriately. But I thought it beautifully echoed the feelings of a generation. It's like, you know, Barbie's so messed up, and what was the point of it and everything. And when the Mattel guys initially pick her up, Sasha and her mum picks her up, and you find out that the mum is the receptionist from Mattel. And you're like, oh, hang on a second. And one of the first clues we get, there's a connection between the mother and Barbie, is that the mother is illustrating, like at a desk, just random sketches, and she's illustrating, I think it's like depressed Barbie or not suicidal thoughts Barbie, but it's and you realise that the costumes she's just illustrating Barbie in are the ones that Barbie has started appearing in the film. You're like, oh, hang on a second, she's almost controlling the narrative. And so when Sasha goes, oh yeah, that girl being picked up by those guys in that van, Mattel, she thinks she's Barbie, the mother's like, oh my God, and you realise, you get this flashback, which is really lovely, this another version of the flashback where you get Gloria, who's the mother of Sasha, you get her point of view, and it's her memories. She's the one that's having feelings of sadness and depression because she's not connecting with her rebellious, militant feminist young daughter. And I love that, where you get this, oh, we thought, of course, you watch it and you're like, yeah, it's the young girl, she's disowned her Barbie or whatever, and it's like, oh no, it's the mother. The mother's become disillusioned. She started playing with Barbie again, but she's sad, so it's affecting Barbie in Barbie Land.
For me, like I'm very conscious about the fact that we're three guys talking about a film that it has a very strong message about sort of the state of the world and misogyny being very rife and the feminist movement that I think a lot of men don't understand particularly well. And I think this film does a really impressive job in the first half of the film, especially, of showing that kind of heartbreak of when Barbie goes into the real world and all the things that are just absolutely standard day in, day out. That feeling, as you said, of like the underlying violence is everywhere. Like the fact women absolutely everywhere like have to worry about walking home sort of at night, and about what people say to them and what they imply and all these horrible things. I thought that for me was just really wonderfully done, although it's such a horrible thing to think about. And then, like Smith kind of mentioned, I think it gets to a point, this film, where it's kind of loses its way a little bit and kind of goes off the cliff, really. And yeah, I don't know, it's one of those where I can understand kind of what Greta Gerwig was trying to do, and I understand why this film was so insanely popular and so many people it connected with. But yeah, it's just a really interesting direction they go in, and I think the cast is really strong, and like America Ferrera as well, playing the mother, as you say, the one who is truly connected to Barbie. It's done really well. But yeah, I just think that first half and that message, for me, it really hammered home how difficult life is.
But here's the thing, I think what they do in this movie is go beyond that, because they do the thing that we see in modern culture constantly at the moment, and modern filmmaking. It's like, instead of making a film, every film has to have a message. And I get that, I understand that, and it can be as heavy-handed as Marvel doing a film where there's one shot where all the female superheroes come together and look how strong we are, and it's like, oh, this is the moment. You still haven't made an independent fucking female superhero movie, but this is the moment you choose to tick a box. And you got to remember, with advertising, filmmaking, television making, sports, everything now, there's every company, every corporation has to meet this, what is it? There's like an overseeing board that basically gives you it's a point system.
Like a quota system.
Yeah, and it's like, you better be hitting these targets. And the problem I have with that kind of filmmaking, that kind of storytelling, is they're hitting the targets, but it's not genuine. I understand the greater good, don't get me wrong. I understand, like, of course, I don't understand diversity. Of course I fucking understand diversity. And they're doing it
to hit it rather than to make a point, whereas this feels like it's been written and directed to make that point first, rather than,
I was worried that was where the film was going to go.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, I don't want this to become just another film with that message. While that message is important, and like Nige says, of course it fucking highlights, like, here's the real world, it also does this amazing comparison. So Gloria and her daughter slowly connect in the second half of the movie. I thought they do a really good job of that. And when they go through to Barbie world, Barbie's telling them, like, oh, this world's amazing, women run things and all this. I don't think it's as explicit as that, but we have like a female president and, all this stuff. It's crazy when you think about America still doesn't have a female president. But they go there and you find out that, Ken is running things, and it's like, and it's done very amusingly. Ken calls, it's not Barbie's dream house anymore. It's Ken's Mojo Dojo Casa House. And they're like, you don't have to say Casa and House or Mojo and Dojo. And he's like, but say it, it's cool.
I'm just having some brewski beers at my Mojo Dojo Casa House. You can stay if you want, as my bride wife or my long-term, low-commitment, distance girlfriend. What do you say? Brewski beer me?
I will not brewski beer you.
There's this scene where, you know, Barbie confronts Ken and she's like, what are you doing? And they're talking about the world, and she goes, and it's so good. Like, she's talking about the real world. She goes, we failed them. And Ken just turns to her and he screams, he's like, you failed me. And you're like, Jesus Christ, what is this? And I thought this is such a powerful scene. He's like, out there in the real world, like our world. He goes, I was a somebody, because here, he's like, I'm nobody. I'm Ken. And my only thing is to be looked at by you. You know, that's all there is. I've got to look this perfect, and that's all there is for me. So it's creating this two-way thing of just not everything is black and white, but it's really hammered home in one of my favourite scenes, which is Gloria's speech, where Barbie's completely disillusioned. They're all at Weird Barbie's house. They're trying to figure out how to get Barbie Land back the way it was. And this is how you make a point about inequality without just going, men are bad. Because she talks about society in general.
We have to always be extraordinary. But somehow we're always doing it wrong. Like, you have to be thin, but not too thin. And you can never say you want to be thin. You have to say you want to be healthy, but also you have to be thin. You have to have money, but you can't ask for money, because that's crass.
It's showing that society is flawed overall. But the way they tie it in very cleverly back to Barbie is wonderful, where Gloria says, I mean, she goes, like, for a human, she goes, I never even thought how that is for a toy. In other words, for all the criticism Barbie takes, she wasn't designed for all the wrong reasons. She was designed for something as innocent as playing with toys. But now it's like, oh, she's too thin, and she's too this, she's too that.
Well, one of the scenes, I think, and Greta Gerwig kind of came out and said that this was like really important, was the scene we kind of touched upon earlier, when she sat at the bus stop or the shelter or whatever it is with the older woman, and kind of turns to her and says, you're beautiful. And that's really like a counterpoint to the fact, like, women try and sort of cut down other women, and obviously how people treat each other. And the studio executives were like, oh, this scene doesn't really add anything. It's like, you should cut it. It disrupts the flow of the movie. And she said that she loved the scene so much. And the actual person on the bench was a costume designer on the film, a woman called Anne Roth. And she said, she's a legend. It's a cul-de-sac of a moment in a way. It doesn't lead anywhere. In early cuts, looking at the movie, it suggested, oh, you could cut it and the movie would just carry on the same. And she said, if I cut this scene, I don't know what this film's about. Because she felt that was so instrumental to kind of, not just the message, but just everything about what it was meant to be. And yeah, that aspect of, as you say, it could have gone a very sort of convenient or tried and tested route, but I think it was inviting you to think about things from a completely different perspective. I just think some of it's a bit heavy. I don't know. It's hard to say.
I think I probably agree with you, Nigel. I think for me, like, the first 20-30 minutes of this film, I was like, I am loving this, you know, like I love I knew, the thing is, I was expecting it because I've heard about it, right? So I knew it was not going to be what I expected. I knew it was going to be a satirical look. Your points are really good, Etok, because I hadn't really thought a lot about that, you know, kind of look at the kind of the whole world. And then, you know, when she kind of lets Ken back in near the end, you know, which is a really nice bit, she's like, actually, you know, I was being a bit of a dick, basically, in so many words. It's not just Barbie night. But there is this kind of middle part of the film where I feel like, I don't know, the
Mattel chase, right?
Yeah, it goes, but also it becomes, so to begin with, it becomes a fish out of a water story, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, good. And then it becomes, oh, actually, no, Ken's going back in, so we're going to see a bit of that. Then we're still going to be in the real world, and then we're going to go back in. And I just feel like, actually, like, this film becomes a little bit to let's go back in, let's go back out, and it just lost me. Like some of those scenes were kind of, I was looking at what I was expecting to be looking at, like the kind of musical numbers, and I just wanted to see like the kind of fluffiness again. I wasn't really invested enough by this stage, like the mum and daughter going in. I kind of like, man, now they're going in, now there's a fish in water. I just felt like I don't know what that means, but do you know what I mean? Like I feel like that maybe the script started to get like almost a bit all over the place at that point, and I feel like actually had this film for me been simplified a little bit more, that first 30 minutes, you know, could have carried this into what I would call like a great film.
Some of the bits that kind of play for, I hesitate to call them like the cheap laughs, like the Ken song especially. That for me, I really hated that scene, like the fight on the beach. I absolutely hate it.
Oh, I really enjoyed it.
Well, the thing about that as well, like Smith touched upon, like Mark Ronson obviously writing a bunch of songs for this, and he recorded I'm Just Ken largely as a joke, and recorded a demo for Greta Gerwig, sort of expecting it not to really end up in the film at all. But not only did she like the song, when she shared it with Ryan Gosling, he felt so strongly that it kind of added to the centre, well, to the character, I should say, of Ken, that he advocated for it to be a musical number in the film. And Ronson remarked, "Oh, it's amazing how much his interpretation improved it, like the original intent." But for me, it was almost like the jump in the shark moment, where it was just like, "Oh God, this is just ridiculous." And I like the Kens. I really liked Michael Cera as well as Alan.
He's brilliant.
The forgotten
how random was that?
Doll. Well, he apparently rang up Greta Gerwig when he heard that she was making the film. He was like, I really want to be in this film.
Well, the fact it feels like he's been missing for about 10 years and appeared in this.
He looked like he put on a bit of weight. I was like, is that Michael Cera?
I love Michael Cera, but no,
don't get me wrong, I really like it.
Yeah. But they had a Zoom call, and again, you've got to remember that a lot of this film was conceived during COVID, pandemic, obviously, pandemic, and it's sort of Greta Gerwig sort of said herself that there was this element of kind of isolation. It's the sort of film that her and sort of Noah, her husband, thought a lot about and sort of created. It's not the sort of thing I think that she would have done at any other time. It was just that element. And sort of going back to Michael Cera as well, he played this character Alan, which was a sort of released doll, I think in the 60s. Only had a very short kind of shelf life. Literally, it wasn't out for very long. And Michael Cera kind of went online onto eBay and brought a mint copy to have. And he strikes me as that sort of guy. But yeah, I feel like his character isn't really explored that massively, but again, it's not essential to the story. But there's just a lot of interesting directions this film goes in. But I think the cheap laughs, and Smith mentioned kind of the Will Ferrell stuff, doesn't quite hit the mark. The Ken song for me didn't hit the mark, but there's so much great stuff around that kind of keeps the film going.
And I think that's why I found it a little bit frustrating, because I felt like there is so much great stuff in this film, don't get me wrong. Firstly, I think the fact it's an original film, and
even if it's based on a really well-known battleships film, for God's sake, how shocking was that?
Original story.
This could have been that.
Original film, quirky look, satirical. It ticks all the right boxes. The choreography, the dance. I know I'm kind of reviewing it here, but yeah, there is that part in the film where I feel frustrated, because I really wanted this. I felt like it could have been great, and it just doesn't quite hit the mark in the end for me.
Yeah, so one character we haven't talked about is Ruth Handler, the creator of Barbie, who pops up in Mattel's offices and then who appears at the end of the movie, who first thing I was like, when she appeared, I was like, it's Carla from Cheers.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone who grew up in the 80s. Danny DeVito's wife still, I presume? They were married back in the day.
They're kind of they're still friends, but I think they're divorced. They're certainly separated, but I remember seeing an Always Sunny sketch a while back, a behind the scenes thing, and she just rocks up in their trailer and stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't think they're together anymore.
But yeah, Rita Perlman, and so she was there, and I was just like, oh, and immediately I knew who she was, just because her presence in Mattel's offices, and then even later in the film, they're like, oh yeah, the ghost of
Christmas Past.
No, the ghost of what's it? I've just said Ruth Handler. It's like she occupies a floor or an office on the 17th floor or something. So when Barbie stumbles upon her, it's like this is clearly the person that they don't say it, but it's obviously she's the person who created Barbie. And at the end of the film, I genuinely thought this was a beautiful scene. I was like, fuck me, this film doesn't. What the hell? Where everyone makes up like the balance, as it were, the odd balance is restored at Barbie Land, where the Kens have some rights now. And again, that's the kind of story you want to tell. You don't want immediate equality, because if it's a reflection of the world we live in, that's it's still very much a work in progress, and may always unfortunately be a work in progress about equality on both sexes and race or whatever. Unfortunately, it's just the way the world is. But they're all talking about how happy they are and this, that and the other, and Barbie says, I don't think I have an ending. And then Ruth pops up and says, that was always the point. I created you, the Barbie toys, so you wouldn't have an ending. And Barbie's like, well, I kind of want an ending. And she's like, close your eyes. And then they go into this almost like ethereal plane. It's very kind of almost heaven-like.
Being a human can be pretty uncomfortable.
I know.
Humans make things up like patriarchy and Barbie just to deal with how uncomfortable it is.
I understand that.
And then you die.
I want to be a part of the people that make meaning, not the thing that's made.
And then we get, I mean, the final gag made me laugh. I am not going to deny it. Where she goes into an office and you're like, oh, I guess she's going for a job or something. And the woman goes to her, why are you here? And she goes, I'm here to see my gynecologist. And you're like, badum-tsh. Because earlier in the film, we find out that they don't have genitals. So the payoff is this. And then we get, might I say, one of the worst closing songs to a movie I've ever heard in my life, where it's this weird rap version of Barbie Girl with but with like lyrics like my bitches and this and my bit, and I'm like, this
is like Barbie completely bitch or whatever it says. Yeah, it's like, what the hell?
It's horrible. It's like it just the song really undermines the rest of the movie. We are trying to talk about female empowerment. It's like, my bitches be here, my bitches be sucking my nipples. And it's just like, what the fuck is this? This is horrible. But anyway, aside from that atrocious song,
the ending, like, I felt that was such a, I almost want to say cop out, in the sense of, like, you've gone through this film and you talk about equality and you talk about the fact women are seen in a very sort of specific way by a lot of people, and then like she finds meaning by procreation, getting
with Ken,
like having a baby. We're not even necessarily getting with Ken, but just the idea of having a baby, that a woman's purpose is to have a child. And I thought that's such like can't anyone just be...
Oh, you mean about the gynecologist line? Is that she's basically thinking about...
I want to have a baby kind of thing, because this is potentially the meaning of life, or what we're trying to achieve.
Maybe, like, I still think that gag is less about the movie and more about leave the audience laughing at the end. Whereas I almost wanted the film to end with her in like the heavenly plane, closing her eyes, and you imagine what happens next. I was kind of a little bit disappointed with the fact that we see her in Los Angeles going into an office on her, like, I thought, like I say, first day of the job. Obviously it wasn't. I was just like, I would have preferred if we'd stayed in that kind of mystical realm of her and her creator, because I think that was a really beautiful moment, which is then slightly undermined by that and the atrocious song.
With me and Barbie, bitch, and I'm bad like the Barbie. I'm a doll, but I still wanna party. Pink felt like I'm ready to bend. I'm a 10, so I pull in a Ken. Like Jazzy, Stacy, Nikki.
Nige, give us some trivia if you've got any.
Oh, I can imagine there's a wealth about this movie.
Yeah, there was a wealth.
Really?
I mean, there was a big story about, like, this film was largely shot in Pinewood in the UK.
Really?
And there was a lot of talk about how the world's supplies of pink paint were essentially run dry, given the set design that was required for this film. To be honest, this was partly obviously because of COVID as well, but it was true that there was no pink paint left because they used it all to do sort of Barbie Land. So,
wow.
So that
was that Barbie Land a complete set then, I'm guessing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
So a huge set, I'd imagined. And a lot of it was like Barbie's 23%, very specific, larger than everything in Barbie Land to mimic the kind of disproportionate scales of Barbie and like her activity sets, I suppose. So it's why she's like too large for like her dream house and the cars and all that kind of stuff. So I thought that was really sort of well done. And again, like the set design is absolutely incredible. It looks amazing. The fact that they kind of created all this stuff, whoever did that, huge pat on the back. But yeah, like in terms of casting, again, we love a bit of casting. This film was proposed quite a long time ago initially, like original scripts and stuff like that, although I imagine very, very different to what we eventually got when Greta Gerwig and Noah Baumbach sort of created this film. But one of the original ideas was to actually have, it was a Universal picture. They had it for 5 years. Didn't really go anywhere. Sony took it over. Different screenwriters. Amy Schumer entered negotiations to start in the title role. She left the project in 2017 when it turned into a film where Annie Hathaway was going to be the star. So again, could have been very, very different. Obviously,
very different.
We ended up where we were. And in terms of like Ryan Gosling being cast as well, he was offered the role of Ken and was sort of umming and ahhing over it, but he accepted the role after seeing his daughter's Ken doll lying face down in the mud next to a squish lemon. He took his phone out, took a shot of the doll and the lemon and sent it to Greta Gerwig saying, "I shall be your Ken. His story must be told." So I thought that was really nice. But yeah, and like again with Ryan Gosling, one of Margot Robbie's, she's like had a bucket list she found, and one of the goals were just to meet Ryan Gosling. So there you go. So she managed to tick off a thing on her bucket list just by being in this film. But again, it was like a very like London-based film. You may notice there's a couple of cast members from Sex Education, if that's a TV show you've watched.
The new Doctor Who guy was in it.
New Doctor Who guy.
I forget his name. I was just like, oh, that's Doctor Who.
And also the sort of the woman who is very described as like a Margot Robbie lookalike as well.
Who was she? Because I was like, she looks like Margot Robbie. Is she in stuff?
Yeah, well, she's in Sex Education. I think she did a recent film.
Oh, that's her too.
Yeah. The dark-haired girl who lives in like the caravan.
She's the punk girl in the series.
Exactly, yeah. And she was cast because there's been a lot of internet rumours about those two looking very similar. But when they kind of dressed her up as the Barbie she was cast to be, they realised actually these two don't look that alike for this. So that sort of scene was kind of cancelled. But yeah, crazy. Those two have obviously been said about being very similar.
Dua Lipa's one of the Barbies as well, I think.
I think she's like the third build Barbie.
Dua Lipa, the singer. It's modern day pop.
My music interest probably stops with
the Beatles,
the bedwetting Coldplay band.
Oh, we're back again to the bedwetting, but yeah. So it was Emma Mackey is the woman from Sex Education. She recently did Death on the Nile and a film called Emily, which is based on the Emily Bronte film. But they used to do like a movie church every week. So they'd have like cast slumber parties, go to this movie church where all the Barbies were invited to stay the night at like a nice London hotel, and all the Kens were allowed to come by but not stay. Gosling couldn't make it himself, but didn't want his absence to go unnoticed. So what he did, he sent a silling telegram in the form of a Scotsman dressed in a kilt, playing the bagpipes and recited lines from Braveheart. So that's pretty good. But every Sunday, the entire cast would gather at the Electric Cinema in Notting Hill, where they watched a bunch of movies relevant to the Barbie storyline, and they obviously began to refer the weekly get-togethers as movie church. So I think that's one of the things about Greta Gerwig. She really wants to sort of create this community of people when they're making a film together. And it was said when she did Little Women as well, it was very similar that they had this huge bonding experience. So yeah, whether you like the film or not, the cast members certainly had a hell of a time.
I'm sure you did. I bet it'd be a fun film to work on. What do we think? What do we think of this film? I guess we've kind of alluded to what we think.
I think we have.
Shall I go?
Oh, I very rarely go first.
Oh, do you not?
Nice,
you go
I feel like I do.
Oh, mate, you go first.
But maybe someone can go and analyse all our podcasts and find out what order we go in. But I feel like
I'll add a column to my spreadsheet.
Oh, yes, please.
Nigel went first.
But yeah, for me, and we've kind of touched upon elements of this, I really enjoyed this film a lot more than I anticipated. Certainly the first, I'd almost say 2/3, certainly the first half. Really like Greta Gerwig as a director, as a writer, the stuff she's been involved in. Feel like there was a really interesting message that wasn't completely overdone. But yeah, I think the comedy pieces of very hit and miss. I think, like Will Ferrell, Smith, you touched upon it. I think the sort of Ken world, certainly that kind of musical aspect, the ending I really didn't like. And as you've probably heard from some of my previous reviews, if a film for me gets weaker as it goes on, it kind of leaves a sour taste for me. And I kind of went and watched it with my partner, and she was kind of really disappointed by how the film kind of progressed as well. But I think there's enough quality in this film for it to be an enjoyable experience. Obviously, over $1 billion sort of dollars in revenue for going to see it. It's obviously doing something right and appeals to a lot of people. And I'm certainly not the target audience, I feel, for this film at all. And there's certain, I think it's much generationally as anything else, not just based on sort of sex and everything else. But yeah, for me, it's a solid 7 out of 10 film for me. Like, enjoyable enough. Might watch it again. Don't think it's going to be one that lives on sort of it for me in the memory for a long time, but it's an experience in itself. So yeah, that's where I fall on it.
Nice. Maybe I'll follow on from Nige, E-Talk, if it might make sense. Yeah, I mean, I think I probably agree. You know, like I've already said, like I really enjoyed certain aspects of this film. I feel like I wasn't really sure what to expect, but then I kind of, you know, I heard a lot of hype. The marketing campaign has got to be kind of commended for what they've done with this and Oppenheimer to create such buzz around two films that you would never put together. And
can I just ask one question? Were Oppenheimer and Barbie released by the same studio? Was that why the whole thing was Barbenheimer, or was it just they were on the same time?
I think it was just the timing, and the fact two big films are coming out at the same time. Because I know there was a lot of debate about the IMAX, for instance, that Mission Impossible, the most recent cruise one, was coming out, and there was almost like no space for any other films. And then these two both wanted to be big IMAX films. Right. But yeah, I'll do a quick bit of Googling to find out.
Sorry, Smith. No, it's all right. Sorry. But, you know, like, I think one thing, you know, I'm very thankful for this summer is seeing two very original films and not just seeing Mission Impossible and Indiana Jones and the rest of the kind of cash cow being created. So, you know, and two very different films from each other. But yeah, I feel like I said, I really enjoyed like some of the set pieces, the music. I love the I love Ryan Gosling in it. We've not really spoke about him very much, but like we've spoke about him in previous podcasts where he kind of has surprised us before in The Big Short, and I feel like he does again in this. It's like actually an actor I couldn't really imagine being Ken, but is so good as one of the Kens. Margot Robbie's awesome. I mean, I think all of the cast do it so well, and
very,
you know, hearing
cast.
that they all spent so much time together kind of makes sense, that they're kind of like this big, like almost like family.
Happy Family.
Happy
Families? Was that a toy as well? Oh no, I'm thinking of Sylvanian Families. Yeah. That's the next big film coming, by the way.
Probably is. I guarantee someone somewhere is going, how can we market this?
But the thing that will happen with this, all the originality I'm talking about, is there will be Barbie the musical, there will be Barbie 2, there will be Barbie 3. You know, basically we're gonna carry on this now, and I think that will be a real shame. Because as a standalone film, I can totally get why people really enjoy this, and maybe seeing it at the cinema you get a little bit more out of it. But for me, that it does, like the going to and from Barbie world and the extra, it almost felt like it was overwritten at times. And you know, we talked about films in previous podcasts where it's like sometimes, you know, some of the best films we've reviewed are quite simple, and I feel like, you know, this could have been great had it stuck to a slightly simpler storyline rather than trying to literally ram everything into the audience's face, including the mum and the daughter and their little journey. You know, it's just like all just felt a bit much. So I don't think I want to go back and watch this anytime soon. So yeah, I'm going to sit. It's not a horrible score, but it's not a great score. So I'm going to sit with a 6 out of 10. E-Talk.
Respectable.
Yeah. Oh no.
Obviously, you know where I'm going with this.
I think so. Yeah. Bring the average up.
Oh boy, I'm going to. So yeah, I totally understand where both of you are coming from. I understand Smith's kind of frustration at Will Ferrell being wasted. I admittedly enjoyed a lot of his stuff because I felt that it felt very unscripted. I know we didn't, like you say, we didn't really talk about the actors much, more about the message of the movie and obviously Margot Robbie. But yeah, I did enjoy his scenes, and I enjoyed them kind of painting that inept corporation as, you know, somewhat powerless, but also with all this power. It was just, yeah, it was odd. And there's a few good lines in there as well that made me chuckle when Will Ferrell was like, the real people have gone into Barbie world. Weird things for our world will happen. And one guy goes, you mean like podcast being hosted by wise trees? That's sort of a random line, but it made me laugh. And it's just, I did laugh a lot throughout this film. There was, Nige did not, and I get it, I totally get it as well. Nige did not like the Ken song. I really did. And I'm with Ryan Gosling in the sense of, you know, you listen to the lyrics and it's like, these are actually very applicable to any guy who feels utterly despondent and wasted by the world and maybe doesn't realise his self-value. And it's all done for kicks, shits and giggles, and we get the Saving Private Ryan scene, which made me laugh as well, because I'd literally just seen that in the opening to Saving Private Ryan about a month or so ago, and I was just like revisiting films. And but yeah, I just really enjoyed this movie for what it. I was worried it was going to go one way, which is, like I say, very preachy, but just one kind of, you know, smash the patriarchy, and it approached it. Whilst still giving us that message, it approached it from a wider, bigger stake and saying it isn't just this, it's all of this. I love the opening of this movie. I was invested throughout. I really enjoyed the characters. I really enjoyed the casting. It made me laugh. I totally understand both of your kind of issues with it, but I really fucking loved this. I really did. And to me, this movie had no right being this fucking good. I was like, what the... I'd heard good things about it. I'd also seen some non-spoiler reviews on YouTube, I won't lie, when it came out, by people who I watch on YouTube. And one guy I won't name, he reviewed this film and he was like, it's a piece of woke shit. And I'm watching this like yesterday after I'd seen the film, and I watched his review back, and I realised in that moment he hadn't seen the film, because one of the biggest mistakes he makes is he says that Barbie's connection is with the daughter, the feminist daughter. And I was like, it's not though, it's the mother. So it proves you didn't watch the movie. You just made another clickbait video to voice your hatred towards the world that we live in and the fact that you don't like change. So what I liked about listening to you guys talk was actual constructive criticism of this movie. But yeah, for me personally, it really connected with me in so many ways that I was not expecting it to. I really love this movie. It's one of my favourite movies I've ever seen on this podcast. Wow. I'm going to give it a solid 9 out of 10.
Wow.
Nice. Yeah. And yeah, what do you guys think of Barbie? Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. Tweet us at offradarpodcast. Let us know what you think of Barbie. Listen to us on YouTube, Facebook, and give us another film to watch.
They gon' say now, I'm watching these bitches, I'm rubbing a stain out. Like I'm ready to bend. All the fake Barbies just wanna pretend. Like, hold on, let me go find me a pen. Look where it led, now I'ma put it to bed. She a Barbie bitch with her Barbie click. I keep dragging her so she bald a bit. And I see the bread, I want all of it. And I want the green, so I all of it. And I throw it back so he losing it. And I give the box with no shoes in it. Yeah, I know the trick, so I got a brick. Yeah, they know who hit me and Barbie, bitch. And I'm bad like the Barbie. I'm a doll, but I still wanna party. Pink felt like I'm ready to bend. I'm a 10, so I pull in a Ken. Like Jazzy, Stacy, Nikki.